Alright, welcome to my garden. I'm going to take you through a tour of 9 compost systems which I've currently got going. Let's start. This is a bathtub worm farm in the front yard. So this just gets scraps and people can drop scraps off in here for the worms. Has 2 different compartments, so just have a look over this side. So that one's empty, I haven't put anything in there yet. Get lots of good worm castings out of this, and worm juice drips out from the bottom. Okay, I'm taking it to the corner of the front yard, which is the compost for the whole front yard really. It just gets all the weeds and grasses, whatever. It all just goes on top. It's very handy to carry around a fork and a pair of secateurs. Secateurs you just use to chop things up just a little bit small. You don't have to, but it absolutely helps if you just chop things up, you know, when they go on, especially any branches or any bigger things. Now underneath, I'll lift this up. So the bottom layers will compost down really nicely. This is just worms and bugs and slaters that have done all this. That's just pure compost from, you know, just multiple layers of basically weeds and a bit of grass, and that's about it. As long as it's kept moist, it needs to be covered in summer. Okay, this is the newest compost here, which is basically a leaf mould compost. So I was getting too lazy with putting branches to the mulcher, so I've decided everything with leaves is just going to go on a big pile. All the leaves underneath will die and slowly rot down to the bottom, and they'll leave this wonderful leaf mould after a few months. I've done it already just with what was there, just by accident. This is a mix of 50-50 coir fibre and the leaf mould compost that was literally just lying around on top of the concrete from the previous stuff. It's really good stuff. And I'll still make mulch out of the leaves when I can put them through the mulcher. I could be bothered. Okay, this one's a standard worm farm, which gets some lovely worm juice. I'll be pretty quick on this one, but it just gets some scraps from the kitchen and a few things from around the garden just to keep it balanced. Plenty of lovely worms down there. That's our new wicking bed. That's got all our compost in there, so we're very excited about finally having a wicking bed. Right, go over this way. Going to show you my comfrey compost, where we get leaves of comfrey. I haven't actually used this one for a little bit, unfortunately, but let's just show you how it works. Right, come through this way. In this tube, come around and have a look at this tube. This is a 2-litre container of sand, which is like a heavy weight. The comfrey leaves just get all shoved in this massive tube. Now I need to keep packing it and packing it and packing it, but for now I'm just going to do that. It needs to be packed absolutely chockers full of leaves. The weight goes onto the leaves, and then down the bottom you put a container down the bottom, and then really concentrated liquid juice will come out the bottom, and you put that on your garden, or you dilute it down. I'm going to show you the compost in the back of the food forest, which takes only materials that are generated in the food forest, and the resources are then deployed back to all the fruit trees, and also some other outputs, which I'll show you in a minute. But this gets this just gets all the weeds and prunings and things from this food forest area. Secateurs. Alright, I'll just stick out a little bit of it to show you. This has been here for more than 6 months. Some of it probably 7 or 8 months, but it's as good as compost gets. This is all the stuff that was left. It was on top. This was scraped away. Now it just goes back down, and this will form the new layer, the new bottom layer, which will be the stuff that decomposes the quickest for next time. And then this will be spread around the garden. So for aged compost like this one over in the corner, I've dug out an entire wheelbarrow full of the compost and put it through a really coarse sieve, which I'll show you in a minute. So come around this way, Asher. Follow me to the greenhouse. Okay, this is the sieve that I used. And it's a super quick way of getting everything straight through. So this is what came out of that corner. It's a really good mix. So it just came straight. So this was straight through this really coarse sieve just to get the sticks and stuff out. That's all it really did. So that's very handy. Any old crate will do the trick. And then out of this same mix, I got seed raising mix by putting it through a fine sieve. And that can be mixed with a bit of sand or a bit of coir fibre or whatever, but it's a pretty good mix. There'll be a few weed seeds in here, but that doesn't really matter. Most of them tend to break down in the compost itself, actually. And there's the sieve that was the finer sieve to get the seed raising mix. The wheelbarrow's in here because I was harvesting the compost when it was absolutely pouring with rain, so I was getting way too wet. So I put it in here to help it dry out. Okay, this is the main composting system for our yard. Actually, this gets nearly all our compost for the veggie garden, and it's the chickens. It's called a deep litter system, and everything gets thrown in there, all the scraps, all the weeds, small prunings and lawn clippings and the whole works. And they just dig it over and it layers up into a really nice mix. So as soon as I scrape away the top layer, and underneath is where it all actually builds into soil. And there'll be worms in there and bugs and all sorts of things. So it's that bottom layer that all the composting happens. And that gets dug out once a year. And it's put in outside. It's actually put over here in the corner. And then we use it ongoingly. However, in this corner, this is actually a compost from a hot compost that I did last year. So that's just sitting there waiting to be used. And this whole area, is where I build hot compost in winter or when there's heaps of stuff to use up. What I'm doing now is chopping. That's actually finished. It's important with the deep litter system and any of the composts really that you don't put in branches that are too long. It becomes much easier to manage if you use a spade to just roughly chop things up. It can be pretty rough, but it's just much easier to manage. Or use secateurs if you can be bothered. So down here, And this is what goes into the chickens. Okay, standard compost bin, forgot to mention this. This doesn't count because I don't use it as a composting bin. In fact, I despise these things now. They just attract rats, and it's very hard to fork over the material. So instead, once the composts are made, I actually fill this up with the compost, which then keeps it intact and moist and doesn't dry out, and it's ready to use. So when the compost is ready, then I can just tip it in here, and then I just dig it out of the bin, instead of actually using this as a composting system. But there you go. They are okay. They do work, but they're just harder to mix around. So I found that just open piles and chickens. Right. The last compost is that I manage on this site is in the laneway. Let's go have a look. So this is a typical laneway. I got a few flowers and things, but the council does come along and spray every now and then. So there's a couple of signs that I've put up so that we try and avoid the spraying. But still, it still gets covered in weeds, and they're not too bad at the moment. But sometimes they get 3 foot high. So I've decided I'm just going to convert all the weeds in this laneway into some good soil, some good compost. So just every now and then, I'll go through and just pick up the biggest weeds or whatever, and I've made a little compost over here, which just gets the same treatment as the other lazy ones. This is quite new, so it's not going to have a lot of good stuff underneath, but it's just, and all this compost is going to go back onto the laneway. So the laneway is going to create its own. The laneway is going to create its own fertility. What I've done before building this compost is just put all the weeds in these little garden beds. So I would let all this, that's not straw, that's just weeds. And they actually stop the weeds growing, amazingly enough. I don't know how that happens, but that's how it works. Put one step forward, lean towards it slowly, and then go fast.